When she came into the rescue, she was with a bunch of other mice, and one of them the owner said was the mum mouse, turned out to be the dad. So because she'd already given birth to her first litter, there is a chance that she could be pregnant. I have just walked in here and I can hear the tiny cries of new life. I think we have babies. So you can see their eyes and their milk bands on their stomach, and I'm not going to touch them, but just for size comparison, look at the size difference compared to my finger. They are so tiny. So they're now 4 days old, and I've mostly left them alone for the first 4 days or so, just because the mum doesn't really know me that well and she is a bit skittish, so I've mostly left them alone. But you can see they are much bigger now. Here comes mum. They are much bigger and they've started to get a lot more pigment. Luckily, I decided to set up a separate bin cage for Gaia and then keep the other females and the other mum, obviously Gaia's 3 babies and then the other litter of females, in this bin cage, so she's not giving birth, or she hasn't given birth, around energetic, crazy babies. I've separated her to have a nice quiet life in the other bin cage with her babies, so all the other females are in this one. I do wish I could give them a bigger cage like the Alaska, but they're just a bit too small still. With the bar spacing they would squeeze out and escape, so this is what they're in for now, and that's going to do for a couple more weeks until they're big enough to either go home or go into a bigger enclosure. They all look much different from the last time you saw them in a video. They are much bigger. You can probably not tell the difference too much between Hera on the left and then all of her mini clone babies, some of the Texels and the hairless, and then Phoebe, who is over there. But they look so different. They've grown up. The hairless are looking kind of werewolf-ish. They're not actually hairless. I think they're more fuzzy mice, but they are very interesting looking. And then some of the Texels have very long hair, particularly one called Medusa, who I'll show you in a second. She has got the most majestic butt fluff I have ever seen on a mouse. It's like 2 inches long. I think it was a bit longer a couple of days ago, but they're just looking like tiny adult mice. And they're about 5 weeks old now, so growing up very quick, just waiting to go to their new homes when they're 8 weeks old. But look at them, you're proper mice now. So something really interesting happened with these mice that I thought I'd talk about, because I've not seen many people talking about this online or in forums. There are a few people sharing this experience, but something really interesting happened. So we worked out, based on when she had her other litter before this one, all the way up until the male was removed when they were handed into the rescue, which I think was the 28th of December. That basically gave us a range that she could have got pregnant and she could be pregnant again, which I think that worked out. I did work out the due date for that. That could have either been the 8th of January all the way up to the 17th of January that she could have possibly given birth, obviously based on the gestation of mice, which is roughly around 21 days. And those 21 days came and went and nothing happened. So I was like, great, no more mice coming, and I was just relieved for her, because I have no idea how many times this poor mouse has been pregnant in the past couple of months, at least twice, possibly more. So I was just relieved that she didn't have to go through that again. And then just after the 21 days were up, she was then getting bigger and bigger, and she was quite clearly pregnant. So this was due to something called embryonic diapause, where the implantation of the embryo is delayed until a later date when the conditions and the timing is better, which makes complete sense as she was nursing her other babies. There was also so much stress with her being handed into the rescue and then moving between rescues, so it makes sense. It's a cool thing that mice and other animals can do, but also slightly terrifying. So her body was holding on to this for at least a month, because these babies were born on the 23rd of January. She came into the rescue on the 28th of December, so she could have even been impregnated a week or so before that. So she was holding on to them for dear life, which is kind of crazy, kind of terrifying that mice can do this. and just suddenly spring babies on you. I'm not entirely sure how long exactly they can hold on to that embryo for. I think it's probably a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, kind of terrifying that they can even do that. But yeah, I just thought I would share that because I think it's really interesting that it can and it does happen. It's not super common, but just in case you ever end up with a pregnant mouse and you're not watching them carefully after the 21 days are up, they can still sometimes spring this on you and surprise you. And there's also no way at all that any of the mice, the male mice that I've got in my care, cause this at all, because they would have been about 1 or 2 weeks old at the time of conception, which is just impossible. So definitely happened way before, and she was just holding them in there, but she's finally popped them out, and I'm really glad because I was starting to get worried that they were never ever going to make an appearance or that she was just fat, but she was just holding them in there for an extra long time. This one I'm fairly sure is going to be a Texel because it has curly whiskers, but in her first litter she only had one smooth coated baby and then the others were hairless, so we shall see. It's going to be very interesting, little one. You are very cute. You are very cute. And then in comparison, this one on the right has much straighter whiskers, so I think that one is going to be a smooth coated. But luckily I'm also seeing some markings on the tails, which I pretty much used to identify all of the other litters between each other. If there was like 5 hairless, they all had different tail markings, so hoping that they all develop easy ways for me to tell them apart, because it can be pretty tricky, but you're already looking very different from each other. Now, a lot of resources online will tell you not to handle baby rodents before the eyes are open, and for mice at least, mice and rats, it is okay depending on the circumstances. So a lot of mouse breeders, rat breeders will say that if their rats and mice trust them, then they can handle the babies from day 1, and if you have a mouse that's maybe a rescue or is a bit more nervous, then to leave it a couple of days. So it is still really important to check on the babies, and that can be really difficult to do when they're all curled up in a nest. So when you're doing this, of course, you still have to do this safely. I do rub my hands in the bedding just to get rid of a bit of my smell, and then also I do make sure I'm very careful because they are very delicate at this stage and you don't want to drop them. You also don't want them getting too cold, so if you have, I think it's called a snuggle safe, that you can heat up and use, or just make sure you're not handling them for very long at all. So I'm kind of rushing through this just to make sure they don't get too cold, but it is really important to check on them just to make sure they're all being fed, obviously to count how many you've got, make sure they don't have any birth defects or none are falling behind and need additional help or anything like that. So it is really important to check on them and give them a quick once over just to make sure that they're not suffering in any way. So in that regard, I do think it's a lot more important to check on them, quickly have a look at them, and then put them back rather than ignoring them for like 2 or 3 weeks. I think that is much more important. So they've grown so fast over the past week. They now have hair. I can pretty much tell all of them apart from the white ones. They all look pretty identical. Some of them are Texels, so they're going to have a much curlier coat, and that's going to help me identify them, but otherwise it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. The dark ones are splashed, I think, and that's going to be a lot easier to tell them apart because they are going to have markings. So I know, Mama, you're being so good. But they are so much easier to sex at this age. Obviously, I got the other litters in the rescue, I think well beyond this age, so they already had a lot more hair and it was a lot harder to see things like nipples. And these, I can definitely tell that we have a lot less boys than females, which is good. Saves us a lot of money on neutering. I can tell, obviously it's quite obvious, that they have nipples at this age because they don't have much fur, so that's been a lot easier to kind of gauge which one's a male or female. And then obviously continuing to sex them as they get older, but I've got a pretty good idea of what we've got. And they're just so cute. I can't cope. Why are you so cute? Excuse my very damaged nails, but as you can see with this one, it has tiny dots on the belly, and those are the nipples, so way easier at this stage to identify them as male or female. As they get furry, it's a bit more difficult, so I'm writing down who is who, and then we'll keep checking as they get older, but this one is definitely a little girl. This one's got nip nops, and this one has none, so this is a little boy. Mum is getting a bit better at me checking on them. I only really look at them once a day, and she does get a little bit stressy, so I'm trying not to do it too much. She's trying to cover them up right now, which is just her maternal instincts kicking in. She's a very, very good mum. She's done really well to cope with all of them, and obviously her litter before this. I do feel really bad for her, but she's a really good mum. She's really protective of them. As they're getting older, she's getting a bit less bothered about me looking at them and checking on them, but she just wants them covered and well fed and protected. She's such a good mum. So we have eyeballs. Some of them have opened their eyes, not all of them, but we have eyeballs. Hello, welcome to the world. You can see. Look at that one. Look at that one. Are you comfy there, missus? Who's got their eyes open? You've got yours open? Oh my goodness, so squinty. You've got one eye open. So cute. We all have eyes. Hello. You can see. So the babies are now 4 weeks old. It's time for the boys to leave the mum and the sisters, and I don't feel like I filmed very much of them. I've been filming a separate video handling them and showing them every single day since they were born, but I don't feel like I've done many updates on them, so it's now time for the boys to leave the mum and we're going to separate them. This makes me feel sad, but it has to be done. But they are very, very cute. I think this litter might be one of the cutest ones that we had. They're just individually all so, so cute. So I'll be honest, they are quite nervous. I have been handling them every single day, pretty much since day 3. Why are you soaking wet? Why are you wet too? But yeah, they are quite nervous and it has been quite challenging trying to handle and make sure you're socialising 24 baby mice. I'm still trying to handle the other babies and making sure that they're friendly, so it has been a bit of a challenge, but they're getting there. But yeah, that is something that people are going to have to work on when they go home, is continuing to handle them and socialise them. These two have no issues at all. These two are crazy, but I think because obviously the mums have been quite nervous when they came in and they've not been bred to have good friendly temperaments. Where are you going? But they haven't been selectively bred to have good friendly temperaments. They are rescues, so they are slightly more timid. These two not so much, so they are going to need a little bit more work, but they're getting there. But I do now have to separate the boys from the girls. You are not a boy, you can go back. Oh my gosh, this is a nightmare. Right, there's not many boys, so let me just grab them. Please, get back in. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be here forever. Stop. Stop. Stop, stop, stop. You don't need to go in there. Maybe you do. Let's have a look. Oh my gosh. No! Crazy babies. So, I've separated them. We have 7 females in here and then 3 males in this. We've got 2 white males and an agouti texel, and then I've also gone ahead and sharpied some of their tails because some of them look identical. we've got 2 white texels and then 2 splashed females that look pretty similar, so I want to just be able to tell them apart, especially when they get reserved. I don't want to mix any up. And I've kind of selected one of the white texels, is very, very confident, and I think she's going to be perfect for someone who is looking to adopt that hasn't had mice before, and I want her to have a good experience, so I've kind of singled her out as being a good choice. I will send over and see what she thinks. This one is also a good option because they're not too bothered about being picked up. The other ones are a bit more shy, so we have options. So now that I've done that, I need to clean the females enclosure, put them back in with mum, and then also set up an enclosure for these guys. I'm going to stick them in here because they are tiny, move the big boys into their own enclosures because they are coming up on 8 weeks old and do need separating, and you need to get back in here because you are not a boy. And I also need to take individual pictures just to send to any adopters so they can pick which ones they want. It's a lot easier when you have pictures rather than just looking into this crazy mess of mice, so I'm going to attempt to do that, which should be very, very interesting. Probably quite difficult to get them to sit still, but we're going to try. So this is the setup that I've thrown together for the boys. I'm starting to struggle to split the accessories between everyone equally, and I also ran out of shavings midway, so gonna have to go and buy some more. I also need to hang up their water bottle and work out some sort of way to give them hammocks and stuff because Exoterras are so annoying. To hang anything in, you need string and zip ties and stuff. But these and bin cages are pretty much the only things that I can put baby mice under 8 weeks old in without them escaping. So just utilising everything we've got at this point and just making it work. So I'm going to put the 3 boys in, and I'm sure they're going to get lost in this still because they are so small. And then we've got the setup for the mum and the females. We've got a bunch of hides and boxes and tunnels and chew toys that are all hidden under the bedding to hopefully help them feel a bit more secure. And then we've got some sprays, a bunch of herbs. So I also have a few things to attach to the mesh, some climbing toys and hammocks and things, which I'll do in a second because that is also not very easy to do and film at the same time. So everyone now has names and has had their picture taken. It probably took me a good 2 hours to get them all to sit still for a picture, but I managed and they turned out super cute. So of course we've got Gaia again, who is the mum, and then we have Aphrodite, who is a white texel, and then we have Iris. She pretty much looks spitting image of her mum. She's so cute. And then we've got Penelope, who is just a white mouse, and then Eris. Eris again looks like the mum, splashed female, and then Thalia, who is another texel, and Daphne, who is another white texel, and then lastly we have Hebe, who again looks very similar to the mum and some of the other babies. Then we've got the boys, and thankfully only 3 boys in this litter. We've got Atlas, who is a texel, and then Apollo, who is a white mouse, and then Hades, who is another white mouse too. So thankfully some of them have been reserved already and are going to go to really good homes. We've got Gaia and then her 2 daughters, Daphne and Eris, off to a home together. And then we also have Thalia and Iris, who are going to go off to a home and live with Pontus, who is going to be neutered obviously, who is their older cousin, brother, half brother. They're going to go to live together eventually. But there are some mice that are still looking for homes. I do have 3 females, which I did have a home lined up for them, but unfortunately I've not heard anything back from them and they haven't replied to me trying to contact them, so I'm guessing they're not interested anymore. And that is Aphrodite, Hebe and Penelope. I want them to go as a trio if possible, so they are available for adoption. They are only 5 weeks old at the time you're watching this, unless you're watching this like 3 years in the future, in which they're probably not with us anymore, but they are currently 5 weeks old at the time of me filming this. So they've got a good couple of weeks to go before they can go to new homes. So just in case anyone is interested, I'm really surprised they haven't been snatched up and reserved because they're all so cute. So if you can get to South Lincolnshire, or I can also drive them to Northampton or other places kind of close to here, please get in touch or fill in an adoption form, because I just can't believe these 3 babies don't have a home lined up yet. My camera died, but I think what I was saying is that we do have the 3 boys, of course, that are going to be looking for homes. I'm not going to reserve them until after they've been neutered, just in case anything does happen to them, because it is still a risky surgery. So I probably should have done that with the other boys I reserved, but I'm learning, I've learnt my lesson. I don't want anyone to be sad or disappointed, so you can of course register your interest, just in case you are interested in adding any of them to your group. They are going to be really good additions to any pre-existing mouse groups of females or other mice once they've been neutered. So that's not going to be until April, May time, I think. They have to be big enough and old enough to go through the surgery, so still a ways, but I'm just trying to focus on these girls at the moment because they are going to be ready to go in about 3 weeks time when they're 8 weeks old. So if you are interested in any of them at all, please drop a message or fill in the adoption form and help me find these mice a good home. But that is the end of this video and the end of the mouse saga. No more baby mice. As cute as it was, I'm glad that it's over and they can go to good homes. And it's not the end of this video series, because I am going to vlog them and film them going to their new homes and being adopted, and also document the entire process of all of the males being neutered. So there is going to be one more video about these mice. And of course you are going to see the 2 that I've kept in my future videos because they are staying with me. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Also, there is a fundraiser that I'll link in the description, just in case you can spare anything to help these male mice be neutered. It is a pretty costly thing for a rescue to neuter all of these male mice, so just in case you can spare anything at all, please don't feel like you have to, but that is going to be linked in the description. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm so out of breath by this point. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!